The small town in southern Alabama seemed to live in its own bubble of timelessness. Narrow streets, old houses with sagging porches, and weathered shop signs gave the town an almost frozen-in-time appearance. But beneath this quiet exterior lay deep scars of the past. Racial prejudice, hidden beneath a facade of everyday life, still shaped the lives of its residents. 22-year-old Jaden Williams was born and raised in Amish. His family was one of the few black families who had managed to build a stable and respectable life in the area. His father, James Williams, was a well-known district attorney, and his mother, Loretta, worked as an elementary school teacher. Jaden himself dreamed of becoming a lawyer like his father and always tried to avoid trouble, knowing that even a single misstep or an unfortunate encounter could ruin his future. That evening, a seemingly ordinary one, became the turning point of his life. After a long day at college, Jaden stopped by a small grocery store to pick up some essentials. His basket contained bread, milk, and a few apples. Stepping outside into the cool autumn air, he felt the wind, a gentle reminder that fall had arrived. As he made his way home, the sound of sirens pierced the stillness. Jaden froze as his heart raced. A police car slowly pulled up to the curb. Two officers, Harper, tall, with a smug grin, and Dixon, stocky and visibly aggressive, stepped out. Their demeanor made it clear to Jaden that they weren't simply stopping him for routine questions. They wanted to assert their authority. "Where are you heading so late?" Harper asked gruffly. "Just heading home, officer. I just came from the store," Jaden replied, calmly trying to mask his unease. "You look a little too fancy for a guy from around here," Dixon sneered, eyeing Jaden from head to toe. "Fresh haircut? Or are you hiding something under all that hair?" Jaden frowned, sensing where this was going. They weren't interested in his answers. They were looking for an excuse to belittle him. "May I ask the reason for this stop?" he asked, keeping his voice level. The officers exchanged glances and burst into laughter. "Listen here, boy, you're not the one asking questions tonight," Harper said, pulling out a portable electric razor from the patrol car. "Nice haircut you got there. How about we give you a little touch-up?" Jaden was shocked. He tried to protest, pointing out that what they were doing was illegal, but his words fell on deaf ears. They shoved him against the hood of their car, ignoring his protests, as horrified passers-by looked on, too afraid to intervene. With every stroke of the razor, Jaden felt his dignity stripped away. When they were done, his head was shaved clean. "Much better. Now you look the part," Dixon sneered as they laughed and drove off, leaving Jaden standing there in humiliation. When Jaden finally made it home, he was a shadow of himself. His mother, Loretta, immediately noticed something was wrong. He couldn't look her in the eye, and though his body bore no bruises, his spirit was shattered. His head, shaved bare, was a stark contrast to his usual well-groomed appearance. "Jaden, what happened?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. At first, he stayed silent. He didn't want to upset his family, knowing how angry his father could get. But when Loretta pressed him, he finally told her everything. Her face twisted in horror and outrage. This is beyond humiliating. They thought they could just do whatever they wanted to you. You have to do something." But Jaden hesitated. He was scared. He knew that standing up against the police could make things worse. That's when his father stepped in. James Williams, hearing his son's story, sat in silence for a long moment. His eyes reflected a deep pain, one born from years of fighting the same systemic racism that had now targeted his son. "Son," James said quietly but firmly, "we cannot let them get away with this. They're counting on you to stay silent. But if you stay silent, they win." Those words became a turning point for Jaden. James wasted no time. He knew that justice wasn't always on the side of black people, and every detail mattered. Together, he and Jaden returned to the scene of the incident. They spoke to witnesses, one of whom had recorded part of the encounter on their phone. The video clearly showed the officers mocking Jaden as bystanders looked away, too intimidated to interfere. James also secured surveillance footage from nearby cameras and learned through his professional connections that officers Harper and Dixon already had prior complaints of misconduct. He understood that this fight needed to go beyond the courtroom. The story had to reach the public. Soon, Jaden's story was shared on social media, sparking widespread outrage. People were horrified by the blatant abuse of power. As the story gained traction, the local police department came under fire. The authorities tried to downplay the incident, but the mounting pressure forced them to place Harper and Dixon on temporary suspension. However, James wasn't satisfied. He pushed for criminal charges against the officers. In court, James stood not only as a prosecutor, but as a father seeking justice for his son. He presented undeniable evidence: the video footage, witness testimonies, and a detailed record of the officers' past violations. This wasn't just a random abuse of power, James argued in court. This is evidence of how deeply rooted racism is in our system. My son wasn't targeted because he did something wrong. He was targeted because of the color of his skin, and that cannot stand. The trial attracted national attention, with protests and rallies demanding justice for Jaden and systemic reform in the local police department. Harper and Dixon were found guilty of civil rights violations. They were fired from the police force and faced criminal penalties. Additionally, the police department underwent significant scrutiny, and a federal investigation was launched into systemic abuses. Reforms were implemented, including mandatory bias training and oversight measures. For Jaden, the experience was painful but transformative. He realized that standing up for his rights was not only necessary, but vital for the broader fight against injustice. Inspired by his father's unwavering resolve, Jaden decided to continue his studies and pursue a career in law, vowing to defend others who couldn't defend themselves.